This is Ben Collins. He's helped thousands of people save time and make money with Google Sheets. But here's the twist. He doesn't just use Google Sheets to manage data. He has launched entire courses and has different streams of income because of it. So the question is, how can you turn something as simple as Google Sheets into a profitable business? In this episode, we're deep diving into exactly that and showing you how you can do it too. I'm Doc Williams, a no-code tool expert and tech entrepreneur for over 12 years. Let's get started. All right, well, hey, thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks very much for having me on today.
Yeah, definitely.
Good to see you.
So, Ben, could you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Sure. So my name is Ben Collins, and I'm known for being the Google Sheets guy online. So I help people with teaching on Google Sheets and AppScript and other Google Workspace tools so that they can get the most out of their business and their data, their business data.
That's right. Now, how did that even come about, right?
So you don't wake up one day and just decide to do that. If I go back, I studied math at college, went into finance as an accountant. So I did 8 years as an accountant, and that's where I learned Excel and VBA and SQL and all these other data tools. And then woke up one day and decided I didn't want to be an accountant anymore because I liked the tech side of it much more. And so over the course, it wasn't sort of, the next day I just started and knew what I wanted to do. It took another year to sort of meander through various experiments to get to this point of starting to do some consulting in the sort of data world, if you like. And that just got the ball rolling and it went from there.
It's interesting. So you mentioned you used Excel and then you switched over to Sheets. Yeah. Why did you even make that change? What was the...
So it didn't happen just, it wasn't a snap decision or anything. It was starting with Excel. When I left my job, I carried on with Excel and started doing some consulting. And then I actually started helping my wife at that time as well with her work. And she was all Google Workspace stuff. And of course, it just translated across to Google Sheets. So I got proficient at Google Sheets, started using that, and this was back in 2014, and Google Sheets only was launched in 2011, so it was relatively new, and there was very little written about it online, very few tutorials outside of Google's official documentation. And so, I started publishing these articles about building dashboards and doing data analysis projects and things with Google Sheets, because that sort of came from the work I was doing for my wife. And then people just started getting in touch saying, hey, I use Google Sheets, I don't know how to do that. Can you do that for my business? And so again, over the course of maybe a year, maybe 18 months, my focus just shifted from the traditional Excel side to just getting more and more workspace requests. And so just doubling down, if you like, on that workspace. So yeah, that sort of, it was just a natural progression, really.
That's great. So if I'm hearing correctly, so yes, you found out and did not like finance going that way. You wanted to go a different way, and you started testing it. And so if I'm hearing correctly, it wasn't a product right away. It was more consulting.
Oh, absolutely.
So,
yeah.
And then how did you come up with pricing? Was it just hey, testing it out? What happened?
For the consulting?
Consulting.
Yeah, well, exactly. It was really testing it out. I mean, I was fortunate. I was getting these inbound requests, so I wasn't out there on a Fiverr or anything, because it's you're competing against price then, and so it can be like this race to the bottom. But I was lucky where I was because I was in early, so there were not many people doing Sheets consulting, and so I sort of picked a number that sounded reasonable, and I didn't go too high to start with because I thought, I'm not making money at present because this is this sort of, I left my job to just figure this out. So I need to just be saying yes to as much as I can, and I can start gradually just raising rates over time. So, I just said I want this work, to do the work, to have the experience of doing a project from start to finish and delivering for a client and working with a client, because that will then, make it easier to do it another time, make me better. Just gradually raised rates over time then, as my experience.
Makes sense. And there was something that I noted what you mentioned. You said that you started blogging about it. So you started that structure of blogging, having SEO, and then that was your inbound.
Yep.
So you weren't doing on social media, you weren't doing on YouTube, it was just straight blogging.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So this was all back in 2014. So social media was still in its infancy, and I did not have any of the skills to create videos at that time. But I did enjoy writing, and I still love writing and explaining things. And so what I was actually trying to do at the time was apply for developer jobs. And they all said, show us something you've built or show us a portfolio. And so some friends said, just write something down about something you've built with technology. So I actually just started writing about these Ruby on Rails apps I was experimenting with, some SQL projects I'd done, some Tableau stuff. It was all over the place with all the different tools I'd used. And some of them were these Google Sheet posts. And after a few months, they were the ones that got picked up in search. So nobody else looked at any of the other articles except my mom. And then, then this Google Sheets dashboard article got picked up, and it's getting a few hundred views a month, whatever. And suddenly I start getting 5 or 10 emails a month saying, "Can you help me build this?" And obviously, not all of them turned into something, but a couple of months started turning into projects, and it was enough that by the end of that year, I could see a path. I could say, okay, this is going to work. If I just double down on this now, I can not necessarily just double down on the Google Sheets stuff, but just on this freelance consulting model. Because some were Google Sheets, but then that expanded into doing some work. Oh, can you also help me with this thing? And some people were looking for Excel stuff still. So it was a bit of everything still. But it was enough to say, okay, I can make this work. I don't have to start applying for jobs again.
I love it. That's the dream. That's the most important thing.
Yeah.
So you went from going from the job, not having it open overnight, but being able to blog, start consulting.
Yep.
So what was the moment why you started building products or courses and things like that?
So it was, so going back to my own days as an accountant, it became apparent after a couple of years in the job that being really proficient with Excel was sort of a key skill.
Yeah.
And it was like the language of finance, if you will. And the people who were doing really well, got the interesting work, were super, super proficient with Excel. And so I thought, right, I've got to learn this, because I was hopeless at that time. I, knew a handful of formulas and did everything manually. And so I just was Googling, I guess we Googled back then, I think. It's so long ago now. So I Googled, how do I do this in Excel? How do I do that in Excel? And it was always the same few websites that came up with really high quality articles and videos. And so I got, over the years, I just got really familiar with them, and they all had courses. They all sold courses. That was how they made money. And so, I realized after a few years, these people actually they do all this cool stuff with technology, and then they teach other people how to do it, and that's their job. I mean, that sounds a pretty cool job. And so I'd had at the back of my mind that, I like the idea of doing that one day. And so, I did a few years of this consulting model, and it was going well, but I wasn't loving it, and I wasn't like setting the world on fire. I always found the negotiations with the clients challenging, and sort of, knowing when enough is enough on a project and avoiding scope creep and things like that. So there was things I found challenging about consulting at that time. And so that idea kept coming back, and I thought, this idea is not going to go away unless I do something about it. So I thought, I will do one course, and I will give it a try, see what happens, and then if it flops, I can move, just put that to bed and just figure out this consulting thing. Yeah. But it did well enough to say, hey, it's worth me doing a second course, and that was in 2017. 2017.
Okay,
yeah.
So started consulting more 2014?
Yeah, sort
17?
of.
Okay.
So I left my job at the end of, or second half of 2014, and I got married actually. So, I'm sure my wife was thrilled. She expected to marry someone with a respectable job, and now unemployed. And so for probably about 6 months, or 4 to 6 months, I wasn't really earning money because I was in a sort of learning mode. So, first of all, I'm fortunate I could do that. We had my wife's income still to rely on and things. So got to acknowledge that I was fortunate to be able to do that. And then so it was sort of early 2015 that these consulting things started coming through, and then it was about 2 years later to the course.
And then for that course, how did you launch the course? Were you building a newsletter? Were you getting people interested?
Yeah,
Tell me more.
that's the other key thing. So starting the website obviously was key because that started building this SEO, got the inbound, and established my reputation. And then pretty early on, and again, I got my wife to thank for this because she's worked in this online space for a long time. She said, start a newsletter, start collecting emails because, either you want to build a client list for your consulting business or you might do something different, but having customers is the most important thing. So fairly early on, I wrote a little PDF of sort of 35 tips and tricks for Google Sheets and Excel, put it on the website and said, hey, just sign up and you can get this for free. And it took me a few weeks to write that. It was a high quality product. I think it was 50 odd pages or something. It wasn't like just a throwaway quick thing. And it started doing well. It built the newsletter list. So the newsletter list was probably 2,000 people by the beginning of 2017 when I launched that course. And so I was sort of ready with a small audience. I wasn't, because I think that's the mistake that a lot of people make, is they just focus on building the product and then they realize, who am I selling it to now? Where's the people I sell it to? You don't just magically appear when you press the launch. So I was very fortunate to sort of, have had that advice early. Yeah. And then the course itself took way longer than I expected because video was all new to me. So there was all sorts of mistakes I made. Like I did a whole day of recording, and then I got to the end of the day and realized that I think one day I had the microphone like right above my keyboard, and every keystroke was like bang, 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 and I thought, I can't use this now. And then another day the focus was slightly blurred, so I made pretty much every mistake in the book and had to keep redoing and re-recording. But that was all just practice, it was not, you can't expect it just to come out perfectly the first time. So it took probably it was about 6 months, and that's not working full time because I was still consulting, but just chipping away. Some weeks I'd work on it, do a lot. Other weeks I wouldn't do very much because I'd be busy with consulting. But it took about 6 months to get the course to a position to launch it. And this was, I had like 50 video lessons, I think, in a sort of syllabus. And
great. So 6 months,
yep.
Production, do that. Throughout the 6 months, are you talking to your audience about, hey, something's coming up or anything like that?
No, I don't think so. I was not even really sending a regular newsletter. I was just maybe emailing between 1 and 3 times a month, maybe 1 or 2 times a month. Just often when I had a new blog post, I would write a few paragraphs about it and say, hey, check it out over here. So it was all a bit chaos or scattered at that point. And I think I did, though, maybe a month before I maybe started to tease it and just say, hey, I'm working on a dashboard course. So you're right, I did mention it a few times, but it wasn't very, it wasn't a strategic plan or something. It was more just like, hey, I guess I should tell people about this.
I love it. So how did the launch go? How did it go for the first launch?
It went well. I think that first one, it certainly made a few $1,000s, maybe $5,000. Mm-hmm. And my expectation was pretty much zero. I had no expectation at all. So just to make any money was kind of remarkable because I was like, hang on a minute, I've just, created this thing and people are paying money for it, and that's so it was it's a thrilling experience the first time you make money like that online. And so I thought, it's worked. It's been a successful experiment for sure. I've enjoyed it as well, more, as importantly. And I can see there's 10, I had this big long list of all potential courses. I knew I had sort of 10, 15 other ideas. And so I just picked the next one on the list. And I picked ones that were the closest to the sort of what I'd done in my day job in the accounting world, if you like. So it was, dashboards and reporting, with data. And then the second course was all about data cleaning and pivot tables, because they were things I just did day in, day out. So it was actually felt very natural and easy to create the course because it was like second nature to me. And then the second course I did, the recording process was smoother. I also had, my second son was born in mid 2017. So I had that hard deadline. I have to finish the course and launch it before June, otherwise, or before May, because otherwise we'll be they'll be done. I'll have to wait until the fall to get back to it. So I think
That's great.
so. Having a forcing function like that helps.
That's a strong deadline for you.
Yeah.
Strong deadline. So we see from 2014, 2017. Now let's fast forward to nowadays. But between 17 and now, how many courses have you launched?
So I've done around 20 different courses now, and probably I think it's 26 or 27 launches, because some of them have been launched more than once. So I've done it for a long time now.
And with that, are you bundling the different courses, or is it just, how does it run? Or it's like a la carte, they can pick which one they want and then they can do bundle? How does it work?
It's all a la carte, but then there are bundle options as well. And the bundle, I think I found that pretty early as well, because as soon as I had those two courses, I think I did an offer where you could buy the two of them together. So, get a little discount. So that definitely helps people like that, especially when they're all, I have a course bundle about data stuff, and then I had a bundle about formula stuff. So people like them when they're sort of 2 or 3 or 4 courses around all around the same topic. And then there's also the sort of one mega bundle, which you get the whole lot for.
And let's go back to, because some people ask, okay, well, 20, I can't do that, but how did you keep that momentum going with all of those different courses, all that? How did you know when to launch the next one? Was it seasonal? Was it based on what your audience wanted?
It was, I think, just based on what I could do. So I was finding that courses were taking 2 to 4 months to create. And when I finished one, I would often want a break of, say, a month or two, just to, well, first of all, figure out what the next one would be, but also just to do some other things like marketing and blogging. And, and I kept on, I was still consulting, actually, and doing corporate training, because that was another thing that sort of I brought into the business right through until the pandemic hit. And then obviously the corporate training went to zero immediately, and the consulting kind of wound down over that next year, because so much started happening online that I thought, well, hang on, I can just do the courses online now, and that's all I need to do. So it was really, I aimed for 2 or 3 courses a year, and that would be 3 launches plus Black Friday launch every year, and sometimes there would be an extra launch in there, so 4 to 5 launches, because I was, I get talking to other course creators and talking to I had a business coach for 4 years or so during that whole period, or 3 years. You can launch about every 3 months, maybe. If you try and do it too much, too more frequently than that, then your audience is a little off put by too many sales emails.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So you're thinking about almost quarterly launches,
sort of,
around that, and then Black Friday. Okay, so that gives you a cadence.
It's probably more like 2 new courses per year, I think, roughly. Yeah.
Okay, and so when you're going through this, what was some of the most successful launches you've had? It might be a number of students, your favorite, revenue goal. What was some of the ones that you really stands out to you?
So the best course launch was the AppScript courses that I did first came out in 2019. And AppScript is a flavor of JavaScript that Google hosts for you, and it extends your Google Workspace, so you can use it to automate your Google Workspace. And so first of all, it's coding, so it's more challenging than just your regular spreadsheet stuff. So people are, I think, more willing to pay to be taught that stuff, because they feel like, I can just figure out spreadsheets. And so, I think so it's a good topic. And then I think a lot of people were, had been with me for a while, had sort of achieved what they were looking to try and achieve within the formulas and what you can do with spreadsheets, and thought, what, if I want to keep progressing my own journey of learning and improve my systems, then I need to learn how to automate my work. And so an example might be, you have your spreadsheet, it connects to an API which is an application programming interface, so you can then suck in the data directly to your sheet without having to download it as a CSV file and then upload it, import it into Sheets. You can sort of automate that pipeline. And then on the other end, you can then automate, you could have a button you might just press once and it emails that a PDF of the report to 10 people or something. And so, you can do little things like that that add up to save you hours each week. So popular topic. And I put this course together specifically about automation. And I actually did so all my other launches were what's called Evergreen. So I just sold the course or made the course available. I did a sort of a launch discount the first week, and then after that, it's just always available to everybody. And then for this automation one, I did slightly differently. I did it as this open closed cart model where you launch it for 1 week and then you stop selling it again. And you say it'll be available again in 6 months. And I did that just, first of all, to try that model out from a business point of view. And then second of all, because I felt like, well, if I get a lot of people coming through doing app script, I want to sort of have enough bandwidth to serve them for a little while before I get another influx of people coming through. And so that did well. I did it, and I did it once more again as an open close later that year, and then a year later I put it then as an open model when I updated it. So that one, it was my best ever course launch, and it was like high five figures. So not quite, I didn't quite hit that 6-figure launch figure, but that's
great.
Pie in the sky. But it was sort of high-ish 5 figures. So that was really successful. But what you have to remember is that your income for the year looks like a big spike like that, and then it's almost zero or flat for a month and months, and then you get another spike, and then it's flat. So you say something like that, people are like, wow, you must be like making tens of millions a year, and you're like, well, that's like 1 week like that, and then the next week's maybe $100, and the week after's $200. So it balances out to sort of be a normal salary over the year, but still, that was a great launch. That did, but that was sort of like the high water actually. It's sort of, I've had other launches that have done, it kind of near to that, but sort of it's been similar to that level.
Well, thank you for letting us know, but I also think it's good context to allow people to understand how launches work, and it's not going to be $1 million weeks every single week through the year. I think that's very realistic, and for people to understand how you've been building your list and you've been nurturing this all the way through before these new launches.
It's very, very spiky, the revenue. And it's also the other challenging thing about the business model is that, you do the big launch, the course will sell, 80 or 90% of its lifetime sales in that launch. And then it's just like this very long but very slow tail. So, and then you're starting from scratch again. You have to build something new to sell. You can relaunch things, but you never quite will get the same size launches again. And I think this is the probably one of the biggest challenges of being a content creator, course creator, sort of entrepreneur, is that it can feel like a treadmill because you're only as good as your last launch, and the minute that's done, you're back to zero again. You have a baseline, but it's not, it's not huge or whatever. So you have to build up to another launch, and it can get exhausting.
Well, this leads us to, I think, the newest product or the newest thing that you're doing. Could you talk about what you just launched and why?
Sure. So I've launched a membership model for people in the space working with data in Google Sheets and wanting to automate their workspace tools. So it's a shift from doing these launches, which require a lot of marketing to be successful, to saying, oh, hey, what if I did it differently? And you pay about the same as one course for an entire year's worth of all my content and live workshops and tutorials we do. And then, you chuck in this modest amount once a year, and you're sort of access to all the new content going forward. And so that's been going for 3 or 4 months now. It's off to a good start, and yeah, I'm just sort of delivering content for the members, and we've been doing some live workshops, which have been fun. Had a few of those now, and we've got some more coming up in January.
How have you felt the difference between a course and community? Are you doing it almost two different streams of revenue, pretty much?
So the courses are still selling, but I'm not actively promoting them or launching them at the moment, which that might change, but right now I'm not focusing on those. So there's still a trickle of sales coming through each month, but it's pretty low. And the membership is, it's very different. It's sort of, it's more like my Monday newsletter, where I have a members newsletter goes out on a Thursday, which is sort of the anchor point for it, because it's how I'm delivering the new content and announcing the workshops, and we also do the workshops on Thursdays. So I sort of have this new deadline now each week, which is motivating to get work done, because I've been doing it for so long now. When I sat down to create a new course this year, I really felt burnt out, honestly, from doing courses, and I also felt like I didn't have, the courses are becoming increasingly specialized or more advanced, which means that your market gets smaller and smaller. And always my goal was to try and help as many people as possible. And also to be economically successful, you have to have enough people interested in what you're doing. So I needed this change, and I think that having that weekly deadline is helping me, get back to creating the best work I can do, helping people. So, but it's early days, so we'll see where it goes in the new year, because it's I'm sure we're going to get to AI in a minute, the elephant in the room, but it's changing everything's so fast that I feel like even what I teach is changing rapidly underneath my feet. So
I'd
say you have to be very. I think one thing actually to work in this field like we do is you need to be very adaptable and not sort of cling to anything too tightly, because you could wake up and the next day, if the market's moved on from this thing you're going on about, you're going to get left behind. So you've got to be ready to jump into the next thing, even if it feels uncomfortable or you're still feeling a little wary or whatever. So
that's good to know. Yeah. No, this is leading right into, now we're about to go into 2025,
yep.
All of these things. We were talking about AI, IDEs, all
yep.
of these different things, AI agents. How are you approaching your business, and what you're planning to do?
Well, so let's go back to about a year and a half ago, when it was starting to go mainstream, and I just like to I try and keep abreast of all of the technology advances and things, and so I was just genuinely interested in myself anyway. And I started playing around with OpenAI and Gemini sort of towards the tail end of last year, and actually released a small course about how to use these tools in conjunction with Google Sheets to help you code and write formulas. And it was fairly limited what they could do at that time.
Yeah.
So it was a sort of, it was a fairly small, but it was really specialized sort of focus course. So I did that. That was back in, it's about a year ago actually, right from now, that I launched that course. And I've stopped selling it after about the spring, because it got out of date so sort of quickly, and I hadn't gotten around to updating it. But then this year I've just been using the tools more and more, and just becoming more and more impressed with what they can do. And I've used them for both my own work as well as just in conjunction with Sheets to see what they can do. So one example was, I sent a survey out to my audience about, what they're interested in learning and how they like to learn and things like this. And I had a very open-ended, or several open-ended questions, and I had sort of 1,500 replies, and people had written multiple sentences and paragraphs, and there's no way I could go through all of that and understand it. So I plugged all of that data, anonymized, didn't put anyone's name, but I plugged all of the that data into ChatGPT and said, summarize this into sort of 12 different categories, or whatever. And a few minutes later, it comes back out and says, okay, this is the broad topics that people are interested in, or the broad sort of feedback you're getting. And that whole process took me a couple of hours to analyze all that data and go through it and make some have some insights and make some decisions that just I wouldn't have been able to do before, or very limited capacity. So it's been really helpful for me personally in the business, many examples like that. And then also just over the course of this year, it's becoming increasingly good at solving, coding especially, and more and more formula questions. And, so now when I am writing some code, I'll go to GPT and start there often and actually I start with, thinking through the problem, planning out the solution in sort of bullet points. Okay, I need to do this, then I need to go and, calculate this thing, I need to bring in this from over here, sort of writing out step by step. And then I can plug those steps into GPT to get some code generation as a sort of starting point. Or sometimes, you'll say I need to convert a date from one format to another, or something, and that's a real pain in the backside to do little sort of things like that. So you go to GPT and just say, write this function for me, and it takes a couple of seconds. It gives you the function back. You just plug that in, and off you go. So it really speeds up that development. And then, even with formulas, though, a year ago it was pretty hopeless. It would know the basics, but it would quickly get tripped up or just hallucinate and make up functions and things. And now I'll put in my most fiendish questions and it'll come out with answers. And it's not always the best, maybe, but the fact that it can come out with these very complex formulas is kind of remarkable. So, that's changing how I think about what I teach. And
I heard that someone say with AI, it's not necessarily going to replace people, but it's going to allow you to become more of a manager.
Yep.
To giving it the right prompts,
yep.
helping it,
yep.
and then be able to disperse whatever you need help with. Do you view it more as an assistant, or some people are fearful of like, oh, I'm not even going to go into that field anymore?
I think of it more as an assistant, and I think, if you think about coding, right? When the first people did it with ticker tapes, they printed out these tapes with like zeros and ones in and fed it through a machine, and then they came along and said, let's turn that into more of a language, like a sort of compiler language, like Fortran or something way back in the day. So now they could write these, print X and do while and all these sort of old computer coding languages, and each generation we've made it. We've sort of hidden more of that underlying technology and just made it easier for people to use. We've lowered the barriers to entry, and so I just see this as the next natural evolution: is that we won't need to write, curly brackets and semicolons at the end of lines and function this with brackets and know all that syntax stuff. I mean, obviously there will always be a need for people who can do that to build the systems and maintain them. So, professional software development is always going to be there. It's going to grow because more and more people will build. But I think for people like myself who are not professional developers, but we sort of use code to augment what we do, it's just going to abstract away the challenging syntax stuff and make it easier for us to just to write in more natural language what we want to do. So in that sense, I think it's going to be as an assistant, but I do think it's going to become a very competent assistant.
Yeah.
Not sort of, so it's going to be more like, you literally have somebody sitting next to you and you just say, hey, just go and figure this thing out. They come back and you say, well, actually, that suggests we should be looking in this direction. You're doing more high level thinking. So I think it's going to be good. I think it's going to be interesting. But it's changing fast. So,
yeah. Could you real quick explain what's the tech stack that you're using right now? Obviously Google Sheets. Are you using Gemini full time? Or are you using Claude? What kind of tools are you using?
Mainly ChatGPT and Gemini, of course, to experiment, but a lot of ChatGPT, I'd say, is my go-to. And then, obviously, Sheets, AppScript to connect some of the dots. And then I've been playing around, enjoying, I've been trying out Sora recently to do some creative videos, and then I've been using DALL-E for images. I've been using this tool called 11 Labs to do voices, because I like to experiment. I definitely advocate when you're working in a field like we do, when you're working in technology, and if you're working for yourself as well, you have to set aside time to play and learn. So you need to make sure you carve out a few hours a week or a day a week or whatever it is, or sometimes maybe you don't do anything for a month, and they say, right, I've got a few days here, I'm going to deep dive into whatever technology. So that's important to have that time so you can keep on top of things. So yeah, I've been playing around with all that stuff, and I want to see if I can clone myself to do videos. Just more as an experiment. I'm not thinking, I'm just going to create a course where I can, but maybe I will, I don't know. But I'm more as an experiment to see, can I create a realistic video of me teaching a very, very, maybe it would last 30 seconds or a minute, teaching a very short, simple topic.
Have you used HeyGen yet?
No.
Okay, we'll have to talk about this afterwards.
Okay, yeah. Well, I'm just very, very early on in it, sort of experimenting with AI video stuff.
I love it. No, we'll talk about it. It's HeyGen and 11 Labs together.
Yeah, 11 Labs has been fun, actually.
That's great.
That's for the voices. Yeah.
So real quick, we're going to do a couple of rapid fire questions. Thank you so much for your time. This has been great. If someone was starting in 2025, what would you have them do? Should they start with Google Sheets? Would you have them go to another platform as an early adopter? What would you do?
Is this someone who is a creator, the business wanting to be an entrepreneur?
Let's go with that first.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think, of course, I would advocate Sheets. It's my bread and butter. But I do think it's a great tool for, a small solo business person or a small team because, well, first of all, you can get it for free. Second of all, it's backed by Google, so you've got security, you've got speed, you've got, the big ecosystem around that. But it's just, spreadsheets are still the best way to get your hands on your data, play with your data, understand what's going on. So, I mean, you'll see almost any SaaS tool out there has an export button. Export your tabular data to Sheets or to Excel, because then you can do pivot charts and pivot tables and pivot charts and dashboards and just really dig in. So I do think it's, I mean, I say you can't go wrong with using Sheets, but also just some way to see your data like that is so valuable, I think.
Makes sense. Thank you. What is something that really bothers you that you keep seeing in the industry, but you're like, that's totally wrong? I just cannot stand seeing that over and over again as good advice. This might be controversial.
Yeah, let me think. So again, are we talking about for a creator?
I would say creator, or I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
So as a creator, some might say, like, build it and they will come.
Yeah.
But we were just talking about, you're like, yeah, kind of, but you had to build a list, do all of those things. Hearing that as a path of success to do what you just did, is there any advice that you irritates you? I'm like, no, I do not.
Yeah, so I think that some of the advice around this idea of this get rich quick stuff, we see a lot of people, sort of the noisiest people on social media, often you dig in and they're very, very good at being noisy, and then they sell a course about making a bunch of money, but they've only made money because they're selling this course to make money. I think so. I think if you have a real valuable skill for an industry or for the world, absolutely, it's a great rewarding path. But it does take time. It's not an easy path. You've got to build your audience as well as the products to sell. So it's that idea that it's this get rich quick is I think is damaging and misleading for people. I think it's you have to really put in a lot of work.
That makes sense. And what I love to hear about you, and this is why we try to interview ones like you have spent years of already learning how to do a certain craft or expert in something, and now you're taking that expertise and now you're teaching, or now you're packaging it to make it a product. A lot of people don't see the years in tens of thousands of hours before you got to this point.
Yep. Yeah, it's a good point. And I think when I mentioned those first few courses, that's why they sort of just flowed out so easily, because it was, I was just teaching exactly, this is sort of how I've worked and all the lessons I've learned over the last, like you said, 8 years of working with spreadsheets. And so to that point, and I think this can help people again who are early in this journey, all those things that you do that you don't think about that come very easily, and you think this is so simple, this is, why would anybody need to know that? They're the most valuable things you can teach, because these little shortcuts, or here's how you just remove duplicates from your Google Sheet, or here's how you should, organize your Google Sheet to make it more readable, or whatever. Little things like that you don't think about doing. If you can, you have to. It's hard because you have to step outside yourself almost and try and identify those things. But if you can tease those out, then they can be super valuable to teach to other people. So actually, if I was starting out, I'd say, let's say you've worked in HR for 10 years and you know this particular HR tool really well. Maybe what I would think about doing is just a video detailing my workflow and like all these little tips along the way of like, oh yeah, when I see this, then I just drag this over here because it's way easier, or I set it up, with this setting because it makes everything look this way, or, and I'd start there. I'd start by just saying, hey, this is how I work and this is what I do, and just put it out there and see what hits and what resonates. Yeah.
Love it. One last question.
Yep.
So, thank you for your time. Is there any question you wished I would have asked you?
Maybe anything you would do differently, although I'm not sure if I have a great answer. Anything you would do differently. I wish, a few things actually. I wish, remember I said I left my job in 2014 and it took me months to sort of figure out what it was I was going to do. I tried a few different things. Obviously with hindsight, if I'd started 6 months earlier and I didn't start collecting email addresses until like almost a year after probably I started. So, from day one, start collecting your email addresses, have a presence online and have some way to collect those email addresses from people so you're not just relying on social media. And then anything else I would have done differently, I think with hindsight, again, like I mentioned, I alluded to, I sort of burnt myself out doing so many courses. I think if I'd stopped 2 years ago and started a membership then, rather than waiting until I was so burnt out, I sort of, just kind of had like a meltdown and, had to sort of dig myself back out. So I think, again, sort of recognize when you're starting to lose the spark a little bit and figure out what it is you need to change and make that change. So again, that kind of goes back to just staying, you need to be like just a step ahead of, never let yourself get too comfortable.
No, that's really good. That's because it's easy to do. If it's like, if I rinse and repeat, it keeps working well.
Exactly. That's the thing and that's what's happened to me is I've just done the same thing and it's worked so well. I keep doing it, and then you wake up one day and it stops working, and then it's hard to, it takes a while to figure out. Whereas if you can, preempt that a little bit, you can make that transition smoother and more efficiently. So.
Well, thank you so much. Before we go, where can the good people find you? Where can they see your new community? All those things.
Yeah, so everything is under Ben L. Collins. That's BenLCollins. So my website is benlcollins.com. My social media handles are all Ben L. Collins, and that's the great place to start. If you work with Google Sheets, then jump on the newsletter and you'll get a free weekly tutorial and tip.
Good time.
And that's, then you can see if you like it or not.
Love it.
So, yeah.
Ben, thank you so much for the time.
Thank you very much.
It was wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.